explaining AI, unpacking the jargon, seeing how it relates to everyday life is really, really important.
Right. Now, when we talk about AI for social good, public permission is really, really important. Public trust is very important. Now, how do we really build societal confidence in AI without really slowing down innovation? How are you all doing that in Australia? Give us some, examples of how you've been able to do that, especially because citizens all over the world today are demanding a lot more transparency and accountability when it comes to not just AI, but everything in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important that we don't frame it is like trust versus innovation. It's actually a foundation of trust that lets you make the innovation. It's starting from the proposition.
Now, when we talk about AI for social good, public permission is really, really important. Public trust is very important. Now, how do we really build societal confidence in AI without really slowing down innovation? How are you all doing that in Australia? Give us some, examples of how you've been able to do that, especially because citizens all over the world today are demanding a lot more transparency and accountability when it comes to not just AI, but everything in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important that we don't frame it is like trust versus
as the
innovation. It's actually a foundation of trust that lets you make
intelligence must be embedded into the networks themselves. Now, when we talk about AI for social good, from being the level passive carriers really important. Becoming the trust is very important. Now, how do we really build societal confidence in AI without really slowing down innovation? How are you all in Australia? Give us some, examples of how you've been able to do that, especially because citizens all over the world today are demanding a lot more transparency and accountability when it comes to not just AI, but everything in general.
AI is already hundreds of millions of smartphones, actually billions, already doing AI applications across mobile infrastructure. So it's already secure and trusted. The network is already providing the guarantees.
Now, when we talk about AI, from being the level passive carriers really important. Becoming the trust is very important. Now, how do we really build societal confidence in AI without really slowing down innovation? How are you all doing that in Australia? Give us some, examples of how you've been able to do that, especially because citizens all over the world today are demanding a lot more transparency and accountability when it comes to not just AI, but everything in general.
AI is already hundreds of millions of smartphones, actually billions. I don't think I'm doing one AI application across mobile carriers, so it's already lasting and trusted. AI is already providing the guarantees.
Now, when we talk about social good, from being the level passive carriers really important. Becoming the trust is very important. Now, how do we really build societal confidence in AI without really slowing down innovation? How are you all doing that in Australia? Give us some, examples of how you've been able to do that, especially because citizens all over the world today are demanding a lot more transparency and accountability when it comes to not just AI, but everything in general.
AI is already hundreds of millions of smartphones, billions. I don't think I'm doing one AI application across mobile carriers, so it's already lasting and trusted. AI is already providing the guarantees.
Now, when we talk about social good, from being the level passive carriers really important. Becoming the trust is very important. How do we really build societal confidence in AI without really slowing down innovation? How do we all doing that in Australia? Give us some, examples of how you've been able to do that, especially because citizens all over the world today are demanding a lot more transparency and accountability when it comes to not just AI, but everything in general.
AI is already hundreds of millions of smartphones, billions. I don't think I'm doing one AI application across mobile carriers, so it's already lasting and trusted. AI is already providing the guarantees.
Now, when we talk about social good, from being the level passive carriers really important. Becoming the trust is very important. Now, how do we really build societal confidence in AI without really slowing down innovation? How do we
That I've been in denial about needing glasses. I said my eyesight is perfect, but this, the enlarging, the zooming really helps. But in reality, now I've got a different story for them, that I've been waiting for AI glasses before I really don on a pair of specs. But coming back to your question, I kind of pick up on what Paul said. It's not either or. You can't, it's not about you either have trust or you have, productive AI. What we believe is, like any regulated institution, that there is no compromise on risks and controls. Our business in banking relies 100% on trust. So that is not a value that we can compromise on any time. However, in order to make sure that we do deploy AI at scale in a trusted manner, it starts with conviction. And we have conviction right at the very top of the organization that AI is a force for good. We've heard a lot this week about AI being a general purpose technology. I really love what Eric said about AI in the network, and I'll sort of come to that in a second, because that is a large part of the answer, is establishing a platform. But if we take a step back, conventional organization is defined by its people, its processes, and its technology. And there are all sorts of safeguards, guardrails, controls that have been built in. In the AI world, I think it's going to be about agents, models, and data. And I think we're going to have the same guardrails, and perhaps even more stronger, because it will need AI to oversee and govern AI to sort of be really effective. So the approach we've taken is on the basis of the conviction that we have that AI is a force for good, it is a game changer, and it is truly going to transform everything about how we live, work, play, and bank. We want to basically make sure that we empower the entire organization to leverage and scale AI in a safe, secure, efficient, and compliant manner. Now, the only way, in my opinion, to do that is to take a platform-first approach. Just like Eric said about the network needs to be safe and secure, our AI platform and our agentic platform needs to be safe and secure. So we have taken the approach of building a platform with all the different layers, from data, model, knowledge, context, and agentic farm, and the use cases that sit on top of that, by building ethical AI, data governance, model governance, the fair and appropriate use of AI into the platform. And by taking that approach, we are able to unleash the power of the technology in the hands of the end users. So just like when you open up Microsoft and start a new Excel, you're not thinking about, is this safe? What's the underlying architecture? You're doing it fairly intuitively. And we should be able to do the same thing with AI, that, our folks, our business colleagues or our engineers can use AI as naturally and seamlessly as they do any other task. So taking that platform first approach is what really is driving our sort of strategy to ensure that we drives AI at scale, but with all the right trust and safeguards.
Right. All right. Bringing in Hari as well. Hari, we've talked a little bit about public permission. We've talked about infrastructure. We've talked about governance, security. There's a final leap, which is from promise to proof. Now, enterprises are, of course, often caught between the AI hype. There is hesitation. You speak a lot about proof over promise. Elaborate that for us. And what really separates scalable AI from perpetual pilots that we keep seeing a lot of enterprises deploying?
First and foremost, very happy to be here with this panelist here. And putting on the Wipro lens, what do? We take Eric's network, layer in Wipro intelligence on top of it, and provide solutions to Devesh. That's where we fit into this entire graph in terms of what we do. Now, coming back to proof of promise, you absolutely brought the most important topic that's in discussion across the summit here as well. AI is no longer about pilots. It's about being able to get value out of AI. And when we talk about proof of promise, we talk about 4 distinct elements that are important from a Wipro perspective. Number 1, don't start with a model. Don't talk about model X or model Y and then start with a model first thinking. Start with a problem first thinking. So you pick a problem, figure out what's the right approach to solving the problem, and then work the way backwards to look at what models can actually help you solve the problem. So that's the first approach. The second part that we take care of is the enterprise story is very different than the consumer story. Enterprises are necessarily messy. You've got technology that's like 20 years old, 30 years old. You've got different personas. You've got different security needs. Data is, in fragments across the organization. So the enterprise story is a completely different story than a consumer grade story in terms of how things have to come together from an AI perspective. So in that context, our ability to prove a solution in the enterprise world is extremely important for us. And when we show it works in an enterprise, that's when other enterprises build trust that's ready for diffusion. And by the way, we act as client zero for our solution. So if we don't get it to work in our own enterprise, there's no point talking to any of the clients about implementing the solution. The third principle here is about whatever solution we build, it's not about making it work once. It should work every day, every hour, and every minute. And solutions that are only capable of following that principle are the ones that we actually take it to the market. And that's another principle that's extremely important for us. And last, going back to trust that we all talked about, if you look at human trust is earned. Even agentic trust is earned. You need something that can work for a long period in time without hallucination, without fundamental flaws in the model, so that there's trust built into it. So only when things work consistently over a longer period in time do you develop trust. And these are the 4 principles that we use to actually talk about, proof or promise as what we call Wipro intelligence as.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to shift gears a little bit and also talk about accountability, because we're talking a lot about architecture. Let's also talk about who's accountable for what in an enterprise, and perhaps in the society as well. Now, Paul, when we talk about responsible AI at a national level, what does accountability really look like for leaders? Is it about measurement frameworks? Is it about reporting outcomes? Is it about, independent oversight? What are those signals that really tell citizens that, this is being deployed in your interest?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's really about having a clear plan that you can communicate. In our case, that making it clear throughout the economy, throughout government, throughout society, that we're going to seize the opportunity of AI. That means better jobs. That means investment in data centers and all the things we've been talking about. But then the second thing is really even perhaps more important is we're going to spread the benefit of AI, not just to people in the tech sector, but to every aspect of community, people in rural areas, to people from marginalized groups to people who maybe haven't had the full benefit of current technology now. So spreading that benefit further. And then finally, just making it really clear that we're also acting at every level, whether it's businesses or whether it's government, to keep citizens safe in the process. We've had a big conversation here at a model level about AI safety and AI harms, but we've also got to have that conversation in the context of our communities and what does it look like to keep citizens safe there. So I think it's a whole of society leadership piece. It's not just saying, well, the tech people can look after this bit from a technical perspective.
Right. And, when we look at it at the enterprise level, ecosystems, of course, are very, very interdependent today. You have cloud providers, you have the telecom networks, you have enterprises. There are decisions flowing across the distributed stack by the second. So it's really countable.
Yes. I want to build on what you said, Tobias, and also Harry here, and the difference between where we are today and when we are introducing agents at scale. And to me, there isn't so much a question of who, because if you are replacing work with an agent, that basically needs to translate into an accountability and also a transparency, trust and governance issue around those agents. And increasingly, we will get agents at different levels. Super advanced agents at the top, and of course, further down the stack, we will get more fine-grained agents having less knowledge, making decisions that are guardrailed in a different way than the top model. So think of this as a hierarchy of decision-making and of course, accountability. But to me, there's no question that if you are, and when you are introducing agentic technology, you need to take the responsibility for your part. If the complete service consists of many different agents on the cloud side, on the advanced connectivity side, on the application side, device side, it needs to come together. But of course, responsibility should reside in the domain that you are provided and that you are providing to the market, to the customer, to the employees. Then, of course, it's never as simple as that. But in the world that I come from, in telecom, we are already providing critical infrastructure. People's everyday and life depend on it. So we have already guardrails from a safety security perspective that we have to live up to in today's world of 5G and telecom. And that to me should carry over into the AI and agentic world. I know there are, of course, discussions about increasing governance, increasing regulation. I think that's a dangerous way to go, because if you regulate before you have innovated, you never know what you will get. But I think if you stay with these basic principles that we do have requirements and we have guardrails in the world we're coming from, and you translate that more or less one-to-one into the agentic world, I think we are in a good starting point.
Right. And we are talking about the world of agentic. Garrick said, machine working hand in hand. Now, as these identities shift, how should we be rethinking governance? How should we be rethinking trust? And of course, governance is never static. It's going to go on evolving. So what does dynamic oversight really look like, especially in a very regulated industry like yours?
Look, I really love that question because at the end of the day, as a CTO in a bank, I am accountable. I am responsible for the platform that we construct and the output that gets generated from that platform, whether it's from a human or an agent, right? So that's my accountability. And this is where I have interesting debates and conversations with colleagues from Wipro and other partners of mine who are very eager to sell me solutions. And I said, if the solution is a black box, then I'm going to find it very difficult to integrate that into my environment, because ultimately I have to be able to explain the output that gets generated. So to your question in terms of that dynamic oversight, it again goes back to the platform. And the way we've architected the platform is on sort of, without getting too technical, is on two planes. There's an execution plane and a control plane, right? But again, it's not that sophisticated. just like when you onboard a new graduate into your organization, you will give them a set of guardrails and a set of responsibility that is befitting of their skill set and their experience. You provide the right level of supervision, you give them the right level of oversight, and as they grow, become more proficient, you clearly give them more responsibility. We treat agents in exactly the same way. So there's a lot of conversation about agents being autonomous and hallucinations. Well, individuals can do the same thing if they're left to their own devices, right? So the way that we have built and architected our agentic architecture is that, as Eric said, there are, different types of agents. At the lowest level, agents are not just autonomous, but they're atomic. And with the right set of guardrails, where it's agentic operating processes, they are also deterministic, right? And we basically create agents to perform a single task. And we make them as reusable as possible to compose them and to aggregate them into a higher level of workflow. And as you get more, as they learn more, which is the good thing about agents, they learn faster. You give them more responsibility, just like you do to humans. But again, going back to that execution plane where you are monitoring every activity that is being done through a control plane. And also the other thing, the other features of the platform include how we sort of onboard, offboard agents, just like you do with humans. And we also have practices in place to manage the conflicts between agents and humans. Because again, just like you have conflicts between two humans, you have conflicts between an agent and a human, right? And you need to be able to detect that in real time, right? So that's where some of the kind of work that we've done, and it's again early days. I don't think we have all the answers, but certainly the space is moving very fast. The key is that humans are always have to be in control, right? So that the way we designed the architecture is to ensure that happens.
Right. So are agents being put through tough performance appraisals? Are they being fired for hallucinating?
100%, right? And again, it may sound really basic, but I view an agent no different to a human, right? So you do performance management, there's a concept that we call agent university, right? And I love that term because I was chatting earlier with James about this. At university, you're learning how to learn, right? So that's what we want the agents to do as well. And, whilst humans may fill out a timesheet to account for the work that they've done and to measure the output that they've produced for the cost that they've consumed, whilst agents may not fill out a timesheet, we're also monitoring and metering the agent for the work, the tokens that they've consumed, for the output that they've generated, to ensure that we measure their performance in a similar way.
Wonderful. Well, Harry, bringing you in as well, how should organizations measure the ROI? That's a question that, enterprises around the world have been debating. What's the value beyond the profit or beyond the bottom line? Are we looking at trust scores? Are we looking at productivity? Are we looking at decision velocity, risk mitigation? At Wipro, how are you looking at the ROI?
Probably one of the most debated topics and one of the topics that I hear most of the time. And I would probably provide you the Wipro context in terms of how we are looking at productivity. Point number one, while everybody talks about use cases and productivity measurement of AI, we think, AI is beyond just measuring return on investments or measuring productivity. It's almost like going back in time. Could you ask, should we implement an email system? What's the ROI on the email system? Could you ask, for example, why should I go to the internet? I have a brochure already in the company. Why should I be on the internet? So a lot of the thinking should change from looking at ROI to looking at AI as a fundamental capability and a fundamental shift and a journey which is irreversible in terms of where we are going. So it's not a question of should we invest because there's ROI or not? It's a question of we have to go down that path and we look at it as a capability. So within Wipro, we look at it as a capability. So we're not really asking this question of for every single use case, is there a ROI on it? Now, having said that, as a business leader, ROI is extremely important.
Yeah, your clients must be demanding the ROI for sure.
Yes, that's equally true. So the elements that we talk about is the earliest signal of ROI is productivity, right? We always talk about productivity as an early indicator of what can come down the pipe, but productivity is only an early signal. The resulting benefit is basically always an end outcome. It can be cost, it can be units produced, it can be better quality, it can be cycle time reduction. It's many of those things. And our goal has always been to move beyond productivity, because productivity is a number that people talk about very frequently in AI, but we are moving beyond productivity to look at some of those end outcomes that we can achieve. And our models are built to help clients understand the end benefit of AI rather than just looking at productivity as an element. Trust scores are becoming equally important. I will just touch upon trust scores for a minute. When we look at trust scores, we're looking at how many instances of failure did happen, and is that within the vector of what an organization says is acceptable or the process says is acceptable. So it's important to measure quality aspects, failure aspects, hallucination that we talked about, all the other aspects of AI where it can go wrong, and then measure what's the trust score and see whether it's appropriate for the process that we're talking about. So we had situations where we talked about probabilistic models, deterministic models. We had customer cases where 100% was only an answer, or 99.99 was the answer. There are situations where 85 was good enough. So again, there's no one single answer to this. It depends on the kind of process, the kind of problem that we're trying to solve.
Right. And do you think business innovation would perhaps be one of the biggest ROIs? And any outstanding cases of business innovation that you've seen, with AI being scaled successfully yet?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And again, let me give you one or two quick examples, because that would bring this to life. One of the project that we did for a client, this is an energy client, and this is for a refinery. And obviously, everything was automated, instrumented. There are a lot of sensors all along the way, and they were asking us what's the value of AI in this context. So the work that we did for them was basically analysis of a flame. And, interestingly, out of the flame, we could extract information about combustion efficiency, fuel to air mixture ratio, maintenance of the equipment. We could derive out of models that we built just looking at the flame. So the kind of information that we could actually secure just looking at the flame was so much superior to using a sensor-based technology, because sensors typically tell you something is working or something is not working based on a threshold. Here we could actually find out the health of what's happening with incremental change compared to looking at an on and off kind of a situation with sensors.
Fantastic. Yeah. Eric, you want to add?
Yeah, can I add one thing? I think it's so interesting to look at how in our world we talk about this intelligent fabric or 5G, and of course there are gains if you apply AI in terms of efficiency, in terms of productivity. You can get more customer experience, and you can measure that in a 10%, 50%. That's a great achievement. 20% saving. We're talking about billions of dollars here. But where our customers get super excited is when they take an example from the complete network, they use modeling on top of it, and then they can start to produce new outcomes. It's kind of a business growth engine. And of course, it's not always that you can find that clear case, but that's really where AI and autonomous networks are helping. Saving, yes, TCO is important, but it's very much about that business growth.
Any example you can share with us there?
Yeah, I think so. Glasses was one example here, but in the future, every device, every application, every AI service will need its own specific service, quality, latency, all of that. So you can start to sell services that are tailored for mission critical for enterprises, and that's what leading customers, including here in India, are doing. So they're using AI for that kind of segmentation and growth of the business. It's an upside that is unlimited, so of course, much more exciting.
Absolutely. Well, let's also look at the long-term competitiveness and value creation that we can achieve with AI. Paul, if we were to project 10 years ahead, what do you think would really separate AI native nations from AI dependent nations? Is it infrastructure? Is it talent pipelines, compute capacity? What would you add to that list?
I would add capability, competence, and curiosity. I think a lot of the things you mentioned in terms of data centers and things like that, they will be built, there'll be investment, but the underlying models, the compute, that'll be commoditized. And what will set countries apart is the ability of government institutions to adapt, the ability of the economy to be flexible to new approaches, and the ability of the workforce to find the new jobs, the new wants and needs that are created, and where the bottlenecks shift, being able to move to those. And I've got to say that coming to India this week, I've seen not just competence, capability and curiosity, but just downright enthusiasm for this. So I think maybe India is one to watch.
Good to know that, and happy to hear that, of course. Well, Eric, AI demands massive compute, massive energy, massive connectivity. Now, how do we really reconcile infrastructure scale AI expansion with sustainability? Is the need of the hour globally, and of course, ensure that efficiency is imperative to everything that is deployed?
AI is energy intense, especially now in the training phase. I think some of the data that are out there, it's mind-boggling numbers, and I'm not even sure we're going to need that kind of energy that is being projected. But what I was saying before is that we're moving from that big data center training into the distributed inference. That's kind of where the book is going. And that means that you need to scale it to like 8 billion inference for glasses, tens of billions of sensors using AI or visual sensors. So what we are doing and what needs to happen is to really have energy efficient hardware, energy efficient software, energy efficient AI models, small models when you can do away with that, and of course big models when we need that. So we're not going to explode energy consumption just because we use more AI. In fact, we're going to use even smarter and better ways to do it, both on the hardware and software side. Then just as a little bit of sort of putting things in perspective, all the world's networks is around 1% of the total power bill or the power consumption. And it actually, by using more of the digital technology, you are able to reduce emissions in other sectors by as much as 15%. So it's kind of a 10, 15 times payback on that energy consumption. And again, if you combine that with what I said about really being conscious about energy efficiency as you move further out, I think it's actually going to be the sustainable way to do a lot of things, not just replacing unnecessary traveling, logistics chains with more digital means. Everything is going to be more efficient by using it. So I think we have to be a little bit careful before we say that it's just exploding and it's completely outrageous. Because if you just project those big data center training clusters, it looks scary, but that's not the whole picture.
All right. Well, Divesh, while we are talking of value creation from AI, of course, many organizations still counting and measuring AI success and cost savings. But at your organization, how are you really reframing AI value in banking? Resilience, fraud protection, customer trust, capital efficiency. What are some of the metrics that you are tracking and really ensuring that this is true value creation for us?
Look, I think it's a question that sort of is constantly exercising our minds. And if I start with the productivity question that you asked earlier, whilst there wasn't a straightforward answer, I kind of look at it on three levels. AI will provide micro level productivity through Copilot and sort of technologies like that, which might be difficult to measure, but certainly it's helping with the whole literacy and raising the overall level of education and awareness in the organization. Secondly, at the enterprise level, and this is to your point on value creation, we absolutely see the potential of AI to drive significant ROI. When you take very complex processes which have been utilizing hitherto technologies, whether it's RPA, OCR, etc., but when you apply AI and agentic, you can actually take them to the next level. And these are extremely complex processes which are error-prone, and you're talking about large sums of money. And when we've applied AI and agentic to them, we've seen incredible outcomes, which is sort of giving us tangible value creation. And the third aspect I would look at is, if we really take a step back, certainly in banking, what is our biggest source of competitive advantage? It's not necessarily the technology or the products or any other capabilities, right? Because the next person can come along and emulate those. It's really our ability to respond and react to change faster than our competitors. And that's what AI is going to help us do in terms of creating value, because it allows us to respond to change faster, do rapid experiments, and to scale and to double down where we think that we will see a significant ROI.
Right. Okay. So I have a question for all of you, and perhaps you can, take about 30 seconds each to tell me, do you believe today enterprises are overestimating or underestimating AI risk? And, how should leaders and boards really measure AI trust readiness in practical terms? So, Hari, maybe if you want to start on that one.
See, there is certainly a level of risk that one should be aware of and work with risk. And again, in every business, there's always element of risk that one needs to mitigate. So AI is no different from that perspective. But at the same time, the overhype about risk is also overstated. It's a manageable risk. It's not an uncontrolled, unmanageable risk. It's a manageable risk. And with the right kind of tool set that Divesh talked about, it's definitely possible to get the best value out of AI without actually exposing oneself to risk.
Okay, that's a very diplomatic, balanced answer that you gave us. Eric, what do you think?
I suspect that it's become quite realistic, the risk assessment among enterprises, not to overestimate it. They're manageable. I think maybe on the government side, there's still an overestimation on the risk side, trying to sort of be too cautious, and that I think could hold back in certain public sectors and in other areas. Then the risks are very, very big if you mistreat this extremely powerful technology. So I'm not saying that we're over the hump, but that's what I think.
Paul, you wanna take that on, considering Eric just said that perhaps the public sector overestimates risk. Would you say that for the government in Australia as well?
I mean, certainly governments have a responsibility to start off really with a more cautious approach than private sector folk. I'd say there's a shift between the uncertainty of something's new that isn't quantifiable to actually, I understand the risk, and then once you understand the risk, you can manage it. So certainly over the last year or so, and the government of Australia has taken much more sort of active posture towards AI. We're embracing the risk a little bit more than we were in the past. But it's as we grow the capability, as we've got the foundation of trust, the guardrails that we need, it means that you can actually manage that risk, and that's the key thing.
All right, Divesh.
Look, with any so-called new technology, there is always going to be a level of FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. But the kind of the sort of the paradox for me is that AI is actually not a new technology. In fact, it predates cloud, mobile, robotics. Judging by the lack of hair on my head, I was writing prologue programs at university, but AI was just well ahead of its time. We needed the cloud to be able to process large amounts of data. We needed the kind of data centers that we're talking about for the compute, et cetera, for this technology to really come to light. And clearly, as we've gone through digital, social, cloud, and data, along the way, we've seen many, many regulations around data protection, how best to use cloud, data sovereignty, data residency, etc. So as long as we are not sort of shedding those controls that we've already built and making sure that we tighten the guardrails as we deploy AI and deploy AI through a platform-centric approach where you've built the necessary guardrails, I think that those risks will be managed and mitigated, And hopefully what we will start to see is the benefits of this combined technology will far outweigh the kind of risks and concerns that we're seeing. The only qualification I would make, and I think that's been talked about at this conference, is making sure that we do take everyone along on that journey with us, because that could be the risk.
Absolutely. I mean, it has to be inclusive for all, especially in a country like India where, we have divides of many kinds. Well, let's spend a few minutes trying to look ahead and do some crystal ball gazing. And Eric, if I can come to you, we are entering autonomous networks, embedded intelligence, physical AI, from robotics to many, many massive systems. Now, what does an AI native network then look like, say, 5 years from now? Because anything more than 5 is just too much to envision. And how do we get today's mobile and cloud infrastructure really ready for that future?
Well, I think we have to look perhaps further out than 5 years, because we're building something that should work for society in broad terms. But of course, AI is moving super fast. And when you ask about AI native, I think that any industry, including the one I represent, is going through major change now. And AI native is not just how you build your products, that they need to be data driven, they need to learn, they need to be updated all the time. It's very much about your processes. It's about how you go to market with that, how you engage with lifecycle management, handling questions. And I think we talked about it in the pre-meeting as well. There's so many things that are changes in terms of how you build AI native systems that it is a fundamental rework. AI native world is something that is very much more responsive to these fast changes that we talked about. An AI native network is a network that is responsive to all of these needs. You already mentioned the physical AI, which is just around the corner, humanoids, robots, drones, all the things that are requiring much more tailoring, much more flexibility from that network or the intelligent fabric. So we need to do what I call user experience at scale, or massive user experience. So everything has to have its own and unique requirements met. I think only AI native networks that are responsive in real time to these needs and adapt and create that best user experience can handle it. So it's going to be a very different world, very intuitive, judging by what we see on the wearable side, but that's going to be a completely new setup.
Right. And Paul, as we're looking ahead, of course, public-private partnerships are going to be key to any kind of success that we're going to see. Tell us a little bit about AI CoLab and your approach towards, bringing together public institutions, academia, industry to really advance the practical adoption of AI while also keeping it very transparent and ensuring that public good is at the center of it.
Absolutely. So the AI CoLab is a cross-sector initiative where folk from the government, folk from the private sector, academics, not-for-profits can get together in one place and often in person to understand things. And I think everybody who's come to the AI Impact Summit really understands that we can't do this alone. Like, nobody in their silo can solve the problem themselves. We've got to get capability from each other. We've got to learn from each other. And I think the 300,000 people who have been here this week have certainly proven that to be the case. I think that it's also key to actually doing safe and responsible AI. It's not just the technical controls or the networks that we have. It's having the people who are going to be in the room who may not care about AI, but they do care about the services that are being delivered. They do care about their voice being heard. They do care about the environment around them as well. So he keeps on bringing you back to reframing that. What's the problem we're trying to solve? What's the mission we're trying to achieve? And I think if we want to talk about impact, that's the key question.
Right. All right. Well, let's also look at the financial angle with Divesh. You've talked about an open finance and very effective financial ecosystems. What is it really going to take to scale AI to that level, especially in the near and short term, enable very responsible deployment and sustain finance without borders, particularly in the Indian context, given the complexities that we see in this country?
So I think it's going to be a force for good. If I look at banking, I don't think the core of banking is going to change in the era of AI. However, how we bank, how we drive that experience for our customers is, I think, going to be transformationally different in the future. Just one example to pick up on your question, if you combine the technology of AI together with, say, digital assets and stable coins, the ability to move money faster, like emails. Why is it that it takes 3 or 4 days today to clear a cross-border payment, right? Which goes completely against the whole concept of open finance and inclusion. So I think AI, together with some of these other technologies, is going to be a game changer in enabling things like that and really driving experience to be much more natural, much more intuitive than it is today. Personally, as a CTO, there is a lot of questions about jobs going to go away, etc. If you look at sort of in any organization, certainly banks that I've worked in, typically the capex demand on an annual basis outstrips supply on a scale of a ratio of 5 to 1, right? But if AI can help us change those legacy systems, modernize our platforms, because let's be honest, right? 90% of banks still operate with legacy technologies. There's very few on the greenfield. All of those technologies need to be modernized, upgraded, and I think AI again is going to be a force for good there. And once we modernize those systems, will again lend itself to connecting more seamlessly through microservices, APIs, without getting into the technical details, through MCPs, etc. So I think that AI, together with some of these other technologies, digital assets, quantum down the line, I think will drive a very different paradigm in terms of how finance works globally.
Very exciting times ahead. Well, Hari, if you were to give a CEO a 3-step playbook today to really scale responsibly, what could that be?
3 things. Okay. Number 1, be very clear about what you want to achieve with AI. So have the vision right. Have clear objectives in terms of what you want to achieve with AI. That's the first part. The second part that I would call out is don't think about task and task automation. Think about what does AI do to your business. And it's an operating model shift fundamentally, which can actually deliver value. So think big. Think about the operating model shift that will require structural changes, methods of working changes, skill changes, and it's a complete change. It's a complete transformation compared to just being an automation. And third thing, please call Wipro.
All right. Well, I'd like you all to now imagine that we are at the India AI Impact Summit 2030. Just about 4 years ahead. What has changed today in the way we live, work, and play that didn't happen perhaps at the time you were here last, which is today? What has changed? Paul, do you want to start with that? And you can go wild with the imagination.
Yeah, okay. Look, as an economist, it's very hard to predict the future. I think what has changed is there's a whole bunch of people turning up with job titles that we've never even heard of before. And they're telling us about things that people in a bureaucracy or in the government can sort of only dream about. So I think we'll see a lot more diversity in what people do.
Right, lots of new jobs, and most industry reports suggest that many of the new jobs of the next decade have not been invented yet. So, absolutely, Devesh.
Well, in 4 years' time, we may not be here in person. It will be our agents or our avatars that are being kind of teleported in, because the technology through Ericsson's amazing network has the kind of bandwidth and the latency is improved vastly, and obviously with Wipro's technology around creating these avatars and these agents. Anyway, but no, I think to be serious, I think what will have changed, at least from my perspective, is banking will be a lot more seamless. It will really be about putting the customers first rather than sort of imposing friction that we see today in terms of how financial services works. For instance, we will all be shopping, much more intuitively. We won't even know that we need to get a new fridge or a new car. It will kind of just occur to us naturally, and something will appear on your doorstep that you didn't even know you needed, but once it arrives, you think, wow, that's exactly what I needed. The payment's taken care of. All the servicing is taken care of. So I think that is a near-term reality.
All right, Eric, Harry, go ahead.
Yeah. Couple of things. One is I'll definitely break my glasses and use Eric's glasses. More importantly, what I think will fundamentally change is the decision velocity. Good. Most importantly, I think the decision velocity in an organization will completely change in the next 4 years. One of the key things that we always talk in any enterprise is our organization is so slow. The processes take a lot of time. It does not happen at the pace that we all want it to be. And the experience that one gets out of it, a slow process is not necessarily a great experience process. The fundamental problem that AI will solve, and I'm pretty sure it will solve in the next couple of years, is the velocity of everything will increase so tremendously that we'll look back and say, how did we ever tolerate something that was as slow as what it is today?
Eric?
Yeah, I wonder if it's doable in 4 years on a global scale. But I hope what we see 4 years from now is that we have this dissemination, we have diffusion, we have everyone being included in this fantastic journey that AI really, really is about. But I think it hinges on this dialogue that we have here, and it's conditional on the fact that we solve the trust issues. Because these things with security, privacy, we talk about them as things we can solve technically and so forth, but that needs to have fundamental anchoring in how humans behave so that you can really trust these agents, as was mentioned before, and that we put the right constraints on. If that happens, of course, 4 years from now, it's going to be so seamless where we have our digital colleagues or AI colleagues, physical AI colleagues, and so forth, that it's going to be a completely different way of looking at work, and of course, how you get help outsource things. I mean, you're going to be an agent of something which is much, much bigger than what you're commanding today. I think it's an enormous shift.
Absolutely. Well, fascinating times ahead. Thank you, gentlemen, for your very, very incredible insights. That was very, very educational and informational for all of us. The takeaway for me, I think, from this conversation is clear that if people, planet, progress remain our guiding sutras, and if we can align all the 7 pillars of global cooperation, AI is not going to just optimize businesses. It is going to redefine competitiveness. It is going to rebuild public trust. And of course, hopefully it will future-proof all our institutions for the decades ahead. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all taking the time here. And thank you all for being a wonderful audience.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you.
Does we have a group picture again? Oh, again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Thank you.